Welcome to another episode of Piecing It Together, the podcast where we take a look at a new movie and try to figure out what movies inspired it. And today on the show, it's our 400th episode of Piecing It Together. How amazing is that? And we have something a little bit special. I didn't think we would. I thought my original plan was just going to be release one of the many unreleased episodes that I'm waiting to find a spot for. I've got episodes on Kill, Kinds of Kindness, Blink Twice, and Cuckoo. All great episodes, and I did a little poll on Twitter to find out what episode you, the listeners, would like me to release. And then this popped up, and so we'll get those episodes out soon. Instead, we pulled a little fastball here, and I went down to Downtown Cinemas, where we've been doing a bunch of these live shows lately. Jason Harris from Awesome Movie Year joined me, and we watched the new Kevin Smith movie, the 4:30 movie, at 4:30, I might add. And then we recorded right there at the theater. It wasn't really a live show. We didn't have like the crowd and everything, but we just set up my recorder and we just sat there in the lobby and talked about the movie, got into some puzzle pieces. It's a fun conversation. And then after that, we've got another conversation because friend of the show, Joe Black, has been on a bunch of times, but he's actually been on episode 200 and 300. And when he heard he wasn't going to be on episode 400 and on a Kevin Smith movie of all things, he was like, come on, man, you got to get me on to talk about the 4:30 movie. So we also have about 10-15 minutes with Joe Black after the conversation with Jason Harris that we recorded over at Downtown Cinemas. So both of those are coming up here in a second. Before we get to it, I do want to remind you, as always, to make sure you are subscribed to Piecing It Together wherever you listen to podcasts. That way you'll find out about all those other episodes when they hit, as well as all of the other episodes that we are recording right now. There are a lot more on the way. And when I say episode 400, that's episode 400 with the main numbered ones. We're actually like way over 500 at this point if you count all of the Breaking It Apart, the special episodes, the missing pieces, the trailer episodes that I do with Jason every month. There's a lot of other episodes too. So make sure you're subscribed. Check them all out. You could also follow us on social media at Piecing Pod. Join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, where we continue the conversation about all the movies we talk about here on the show. And don't forget, we do have a Patreon, the Produced by David Rosen Patreon, where I post bonus and advanced content from Piecing It Together, Awesome Movie Year, and my music career. So that's over at patreon.com/bydavidrosen. And with all that said, let's get into episode 400, the 4:30 movie. All right, Jason Harris, we're right here at Downtown Cinemas. We just watched the 4:30 movie, and we're going to do this.
First, we got to congratulate you. It's your 400th episode?
400th episode.
That's amazing.
Ridiculous. How many have you been on?
You're the one who keeps track of the stats.
I don't keep track of anything.
No, I'm happy to, it's nice to always be doing the trailers and keep up, and then when we actually get to do the episodes. I always notice that our episodes like these are so much shorter than some of the other episodes. It's like a quick, tight 30, and then I'll listen to another one. I'll be like, how the fuck do they get an hour and 12 minutes out of this thing?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, we're always trying to squeeze them in. Plus, we do the trailers, so a lot of the times we'll have maybe even talked about the movie before, and we kind of feel that maybe a little self-consciousness, even after all these years, that we've already talked about.
I think with this one, we came up with a lot of pieces that do fit for the that we did on the trailer episode. That makes sense.
Yeah, and I think we'll bring them back up because, who knows, who listens to the trailers and who doesn't. But, I mean, before we start getting into the pieces, I know personally I've been very let down from the last 10 years or so of Kevin Smith movies. Where were you at coming into this?
Well, I think, growing up in the 90s and Clerks was as seminal as a film to me. It was like Clerks and Swingers, right? Those were the two, I think, that and in its own way, like a Billy Madison or Happy Gilmore, right? Those were the big three. But Clerks and Swingers were like, oh, that's what I want to do when I get older, right? I want to make movies like that. And
I think Kevin Smith watched his own movies and thought that too.
Yeah, I mean, so now you get to, after that, Mallrats, okay, not great, but even he was out there like, oh, the studio screwed me. Then we all loved Chasing Amy at the time, which I don't think we all know didn't age well. But I mean, I still think Chasing Amy has moments. You get to Dogma, which I don't think I've rewatched since the theater. I know, like, finally it's getting, like, a DVD release.
Yeah, it's been held up in rights and whatnot for years.
So I'd like to rewatch it. I remember the effects were terrible on that, and, you know, that's not his specialty. You know, on the trailer episode, we said the last good movie he made might have been Zack and Miri. Is that right?
That's what you said, and I completely agreed with you. I have not liked anything he's done since then. I do know that some things like Red State have their fans, and of course he's got his fan base, even if we haven't liked his recent stuff. I mean, it's almost like a cult at this point.
I mean, dude, here's the thing, right? Like, I haven't seen Tusk, so I got to say that. Like, Yoga Hosers was almost unwatchable.
Totally.
The Jay and Silent Bob, the last one. I mean, I did like the first one.
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's really fun. So that might have been his last great movie, right?
Yeah.
So the second one is terrible, just garbage. Clerks 2, I like. I know people are kind of somewhat. Clerks 3, I don't know how anyone in the world would like. It's so bad.
Yeah, one of the worst movies I've seen in years. And going into this, the 4:30 movie, I was a little worried because I noticed a lot of the same people giving this a good review also really liked Clerks 3, and I was like, I don't know if this is going to work for me. But I tried to go in with an open mind anyway.
My big thing, I mean, look, there's 2 points. One, I give this dude so much credit that he created an industry simply about himself. I don't know how he did it, especially with like diminishing returns on a lot of the movies, but he did, and he's still making it work. And I think you and I go in every time being like, is this the one where he recaptures it?
100%.
And it hasn't happened.
No.
And, you know, so that's one issue I have. The other issue I have is, I don't even remember what it was, but it was this, because we saw this in this movie. There's a laziness to so many things, like where we're like, the logic just doesn't make sense, right? In this movie, there's a scene where the main character is talking to his mom on the phone, and the mom says, "I love you," and he goes, "Okay, I gotta go." He's like, "What, you're not gonna say I love you back?" And that's the argument. And he goes, "Okay, fine, I'm in public, but I love you too." And then he wants to go, and then she calls back like, "You're not gonna let me say I love you too?" And it's like, it's just lazy. There's a whole thing. They spend the whole day trying to get to this movie, and you know they finally are like, "We'll go to the 7:15." I mean, they must have shot the stuff outside at like 12 in the afternoon.
Totally.
It's just laziness. I get it. There's budget concerns, but these are the gaps in logic that bother me and infuriate me in movies, and like. In every one of his movies lately, it's been like this.
Well, I think every draft, and maybe this will come up in some pieces, I don't know, but like every film feels like it's the first draft from him. Like it's always like, okay, we have a script, that's good enough, let's start shooting.
You know what, you're right, because I always feel like you're saying, you know, like he gets so many actors to play like thankless one-line parts, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's the same thing with his producers, right? They're like, oh, Kevin wants to make a movie, we'll just make a Kevin Smith movie, and it's like, there's got to be someone who has to tell him, like, hey, logically, this doesn't add up. And I don't think there's anyone who does that.
Yeah.
That said, this is better than the last few
It's
movies.
the best movie in like 10 years. Yeah, even if I didn't really like it. But let's start getting into the puzzle pieces. What do you got first?
So, the first one, I mean, and I mentioned it on the trailer episode, I'm going to say is Ping Pong Summer, because this is like a throwback to the 80s. Been a real fun, trying to capture the nostalgia of it. There's so many like on the nose jokes about like Hands Across America and stuff like that. Ping Pong Summer, I think, is a great movie. And then I think you threw out Adventureland when you did it.
On the
Those
trailers.
are 2 great movies that take place in the 80s, but don't feel the need to shine a light. Like, hey, look, we're making a movie in the 80s, right?
Yeah.
So, one thing that really bothered me, which I thought they could have gotten away with once here, but they did so often, was like, they'll talk about Star Wars and they'll be like, after Jedi, they'll be like, oh, at least that's the last one. What are they going to do? Go tell the first 3? Oh, no one want that. What? People want to watch TV shows about the side character? And they did that so many times, and it's like, dude, I get it once, but like it's so lazy after a while.
It's the same joke over and over again, and it's also just not something we haven't already heard before. I was going to throw on something I hadn't thought of beforehand, but Rescue Rangers, the Chippendale Rescue Rangers with the Lonely Island guys, who I love them so much, and Akiva Shaver. I think that they're so funny, but that movie rested so much on like little inside jokes, Easter eggs, and callbacks to pop culture things. One thing I did like though was that the movie that they are trying to go see at 4:30 and then eventually at 7. It's I think it's called Bucklick, and it's basically supposed to be Fletch. You can tell by the poster.
I saw the poster.
Yeah, and I like that inside joke. First of all, because I haven't heard that joke before. The fact that Kevin Smith was supposed to make a Fletch, so that just felt like a fresh "remember this" joke. You know what I mean?
Right, but then it was surrounded by like Buttlick.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
it's like
exactly. Yeah, but I want to see that Ping Pong Summer. Adventureland, I want to rewatch because it's so good. But that sounds like a lot of fun.
It's great, and then also, you know, I don't think either of us have seen it, but I know it's like on both of our lists, and it's getting compared a lot to this one, with Snack Shack from this year.
I've been really looking forward to that.
So, yeah, I mean, it's just you're talking about things that we've heard before. The actress who plays the love interest, Melanie Barnegat, is the best thing in this movie.
I think you're right. Yeah,
she's really good. She's and at one point, you know, Brian, the main character, makes a rhyme and he says, "You're a poet. You're a poet, and you didn't even know it." And that, you know, I know is a line that's been thrown around a lot. But that the first time I ever heard it was Pee Wee Herman on Pee Wee's Playhouse.
Okay.
So, and I have a lot of weird pieces where it's like, oh, this is referencing this. Like, I'll do another one after this, but I think there's a lot of TV show references, whether intentional or not, from here.
Okay, all right, yeah, no, that's fun, and yeah, I mean, we're talking about how many remember that, and like mentioning Star Wars and all this. So I mean, it makes sense that there's just like a lot of Easter eggs and references and things like that. I'm gonna go with Empire of Light, the Sam Mendes movie that takes place in a movie theater, the whole movie. And I remember we went into, I forget if you saw it, actually.
I have not seen it.
You haven't seen it, but I went into it really excited because I was like, oh, we got this great filmmaker making a movie about, essentially it seemed like it was going to be about their experience growing up in movie theaters, and just, you know, we could all relate to that so well. And then it ends up just being about all this other stuff. And that movie was just so overstuffed with other plots and stuff. And I feel like this movie, I saw a review, and I don't want to like call out anybody, but I saw a review, somebody who said, after watching this movie, they were like, oh my God, I want to go to film school now and become a filmmaker. And I was like, watching this, I'm like, what? Like, what are you talking about? This is just a love story, essentially, or like a bunch of friends who just kind of, like, it's not really about filmmaking or anything like
No, it's not, but I mean, it's about the love of movies, so I guess that's okay.
Yeah.
You know, the one we brought up that I think I brought up on the trailer episode was Cinema Paradiso.
Sure.
Which it really is maybe the best movie showcasing someone's love for watching movies, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So, I hear all that. I will go with a super deep cut here. They have Sam Richardson is always funny, right?
Sure.
You know,
yeah.
He plays this '80s wrestler, Major Murder, right?
Mm-hmm.
In here. But if you want to see Sam Richardson do a funnier wrestling bit, the sketch on "I Think You Should Leave" season 3.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
It's so great. And then I want to add on to that, the WWE a few years ago did a thing with like John Cena and Chris Jericho and these guys. It was called Southpaw Wrestling. It was just like a YouTube show.
Mm-hmm.
And it was all these guys like who are famous wrestlers pretending to be like 80s territory wrestlers in the South. And it was pretty well done. So those were two better examples of 80s wrestling that I would throw out there.
That's pretty great.
Homages to those.
That's pretty awesome. I'm going to go, you know, we talked about Adventureland, which, you know, obviously captures the era. I'm going to go to a different era, but a similar kind of friendship group, Superbad, a movie we talked about on Awesome Movie Year. And, you know, a movie that like pretty perfectly captures that moment in time. And you were talking about how the actress who plays Melody just being so great. I mean, look at Emma Stone coming out of that as just this huge, like, you know, presence in movies from that point forward. I could see this girl really kind of blowing up.
I think so. I think she was really good. You know, she's like, you know, when you think of like a young ingenue right now, you probably think of like a Jenna Ortega type, right?
Sure.
And she has that same command of like, oh, she's interesting in the way that she's delivering things. Like, there's an honesty to her performance. The three main the guys, they were fine. They were good, right?
Yeah, they were
like,
all right.
It was, you know, it wasn't bad, but it's just, it wasn't, you know, she elevated it. I think she was definitely the best thing.
Yeah.
As far as that goes, you know, it's funny because we're talking about like these moments of like summer and like the days being so long. Like, you know, when I was 16, I had moved out to Vegas, and then I went back and spent the summer with my friend Jay Gruber in my old hometown in New Jersey, right? And it was like every day we would wake up, we'd walk to town, we'd go to the video store, right?
Yeah.
We would argue about what movie to rent. We wouldn't rent it because we were arguing. We would hide whatever we thought our main choice was behind Bushwhacked because we know no one would rent Bushwhacked, right?
Yeah.
Then in the same mall, you had a bagel shop, you had a Chinese restaurant, and you had a pizza shop, right?
Mm.
So we'd always get lunch, then we would go back, get the movie, probably go home, swim, hang out with friends at night, watch movies at night, and it's like, now
Sounds great.
it was so awesome. And now now we like, it's like, oh, can I fit in a movie today? Can I fit in watching something, right?
Yeah.
But I remember the reason I brought all this up is because like in the trailers I mentioned Kings of Summer, and you mentioned a lot of pieces. I think we kind of nailed a lot that we did.
Yeah.
With that, so to add new pieces, I mean, did you say Stranger Things in the trailer? Because this is like, I feel like this is.
I don't think I did. No.
Kevin Smith watched Stranger Things and was like, oh, they did a better job of mall work than he did, and
Yeah.
And then so their homage to, or they're setting everything in and around the mall
Yeah.
in that season, I think really kind of equates well to what they did with the movie theater here.
I think, like, aside from that actress who plays Melody, I think the other best thing about this movie is the setting. Like, I think it does capture that era pretty damn well, even if not a lot of the jokes landed, and even if it all just kind of felt a little bit unoriginal, not unique particularly. I think that setting-wise, it really does capture that feeling of just hanging out all day, hanging out with friends, going to eat, going to the movies, going wherever, and wondering what's going to happen next. Like, I think he captures all that really well.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because, you look at a movie like this and you're like, what are the stakes? And it's really is like, this guy going to get that girl, that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
But, so you don't need big stakes, but you just need a momentum to keep propelling it.
Yeah.
And there's not that much momentum to this thing at all.
Yeah.
Also, can I just point out, obviously we know he casts his wife, his family, his friends. He cast his daughter as the nun who becomes a prostitute.
Yeah,
Did anyone
sugar
find-
walls.
Yeah. You think it's weird that he would cast his daughter as the prostitute? Like,
It's pretty strange. Yeah, I was
she's a
thinking that
nun
too.
and a prostitute. It's
Yeah.
like, what's going on with you inside, buddy? So,
Yeah, that was a little bit odd. I was thinking about, as far as, a movie about your childhood and about what led you, towards a world of filmmaking. I mean, obviously The Fablemans is one that I think has to come up on here. And, that kind of goes along with Empire of Light when we were talking about that. It was the same year where there was all these movies that had to do with that love of cinema. And that, of course, is Spielberg's big love letter to cinema and growing up and feeling aimless. But then, you find out that movies are a direction that you can take in life. And again, I wish this movie went there more. I mean, we get the idea that this is Kevin Smith basically by the end with the post-credit or mid-credit scene. But I mean, they should have went into that more, I think.
So we're going to spoil this right now, right? So
Sure,
the last scene, right, is, it's a mid-credit scene, right? And this kid's talking about how he loves movies the whole time, Brian, right? Who's clearly Kevin Smith, right?
Yeah.
And the last scene is him and Melody on the bench, and they're looking at something, and, they're making it sound like, did they have sex? Are you going to go in? Did you do it, right? The two other friends come out. And it's really, he's like, I'm nervous. And it's like, well, you're nervous, and it's really about him applying to the quick stop, right?
Right.
Which makes sense in the View Askew universe, but it doesn't make sense in the context of this movie because we've never seen any of it. And say this is your first Kevin Smith movie, you'd be like, why is he nervous to apply to a convenience store?
That wouldn't make sense.
Yeah. So and it didn't make sense because the characters never got there. I had two movies, Dave, that talking about the importance of movies to a town, to teenagers, to a setting. The Last Picture Show, right? Amazing Bogdanovich, Peter Bogdanovich's first movie, and kind of in a way is cool because that was in the 70s and was showing about movie theater that was dying,
Yeah.
in the 50s or the 70s, whatever, the earlier times, right? And this is something that you see now as the 80s, which obviously doesn't exist anymore or whatever. And the other one was the Coppola movie, The Outsiders, because so much of it takes place at the drive-in, and the romance takes place at the drive-in, and the flirtiness, and it's a really cool, underrated movie, The Outsiders, I think.
I've never seen it. I should probably watch that.
Stay golden, pony boy.
Is that where that comes from?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't know. Right on. I think there's plenty of other directions you can go for this particular idea, but I'm gonna go with UHF, the Weird Al movie, for the fake trailers within the movie. You were mentioning the ones with his daughter, but we also have the fake movies itself that they're going to watch, and they're all just very like ridiculous little one-bit joke kind of trailers, and so I definitely thought of that. I also thought that they do a pretty good job of approximating the style of those kinds of 80s movies,
So the Sister Sugar Wells, that was fun, kind of like Angel. She's, she's a blank by day and a prostitute by night, right?
Yeah.
The one that was so bad was their Flash Gordon takeoff, which had a great soundtrack, but it was like really Dietrich Baker doing a voice and the other guy who I don't know saying he's in a Van Halen cover band. And the guy is not up to the task, really.
I'm curious if his View Askew-universe cults that all show up to all of his stuff, if they found that funny, because that just seems completely flat.
I know, and I don't know who that guy is, but also I didn't think that was good. Like, I mean, that movie, you could have way more fun making the fake movie there, right? And they did a very bad job of that. So that was a bummer. I think we're gonna go, talking about pop culture and the kind of really fun ways of using pop culture in a movie, more so than here, but I thought it was a clear whip-off. They play that song, which I think Kevin Smith's played in another movie, Shaka Khan.
Yeah, right? I think so too, yeah.
And the guys are dancing in the car, and it was very reminiscent of Bohemian Rhapsody in Wayne's World.
Yeah, I thought about that too, yeah. And I feel like there's probably like a whole lot of other versions of that we could point to, but that's obviously the classic.
Yeah,
so yeah, that's a good one. I will go with my last one that I wrote down, which, I mean, obviously it's cheating a little bit, but Clerks 3. I mean, it's Kevin Smith retelling his own legacy, kind of building the mythos around himself and how he eventually got to the point where he was making the first Clerks. And that's what that whole movie is. It's a great idea. I loved the idea of Clerks 3. I just thought the execution of it didn't work at all. And I think, like we said when we started this conversation, I think this movie is better, even though it wasn't great. But at least it's kind of the prequel to Clerks 3 in a way.
It's watchable, which is more than you could say about Clerks 3, right?
So, exactly.
I could see that. What's he doing next? Do we know? Is it another Jay and Silent Bob? Is it another...
Well, I did... The biggest laugh of this movie was in the trailer. It says, from the director of, it lists all his movies, and it says, and probably Clerks 4. So, but, I mean, that's just a joke. But, he's probably doing one of his podcast ideas made into a movie.
I got to say, I want to give Kevin Smith credit. I don't know if you remember, but once I tweeted to him, like, hey... Kevin Smith, once you're done rebooting, because he was not only, it was probably during the same Jay and Silent Bob reboot, but he was going to reboot everything. I go, what are you going to reboot next? Your high school yearbook? And he tweeted me back with a picture of his yearbook, and it was like, should I do 86? And I was like, you're dope, bro.
Nice, that's good.
Like, we still want to love this guy, right?
So, we keep giving him chances. We really want him to succeed.
So, Dave, you just mentioned Clerks 3. I have another Kevin Smith reference point that I noticed in here that was overt. I have Chasing Amy in here because there's a scene where there's the three friends. There's Brian and Italian guy and weird guy, right? So Brian, Italian guy's always making fun of Brian because he wants to be with Melody, and also because he's short. And those jokes got old fast too, right? So you know what? And I'll just throw two in one right here because I had Elf in there because I thought the scene in Elf where he's accidentally making fun of Peter Dinklage for his height, where he thinks he's an elf, is so much smarter than like, hey, you're short, here. But in this movie, right, so Brian and Italian guy, we'll call him Sebastian Maniscalco, fight, right?
Why not?
And they fight, and then weird guy comes in and he's like, you know about women and you know about movies, but here's what I know about you two, right? And he gives this whole big speech like, you're scared to let Brian date Melody because you think that he's gonna be away from us, and then the next, and Brian, you're scared that Italian guy will never accept you for who you are. And it's like, this is just a rehash of the speech that, they all give each other towards the end there. Like, you're secretly in love with Banky, and you're secretly in love with Holden, and you guys have a three-way, and it's like the exact same structure of that speech and everything.
Oh, you're so right. I didn't even think of that, but yeah, that's exactly what it is. They all kind of reveal how much each other are just kind of messing with each other. So
yeah, it's all that, and it's just very on the nose. Like, you got to do this, so this person can move forward. You got to do this, so this person can move forward.
Yeah.
So it's a very obvious homage to Chasing Amy to me.
Absolutely. I will throw in here, it's not really a puzzle piece, I guess. I mean, I guess I could go with Fool's Paradise because how much I love it, and I know everybody else hates it. But Ken Jeong is really funny in this movie. One of the best parts of it, I thought, even though, I mean, it's basically like 6 lines, but whenever he opened his mouth, I thought he was actually pretty damn funny.
He's fun. It's funny because we went out to him with a Christmas movie, and it was like a real meaty part. Mm-hmm. And the feedback from his manager was he likes it, but he's going to pass on it. And I'm like, this, So, but okay, like that's fine. Whatever he wants to do is.
There was just an article about how Richard Kind will do any.
I know. I sent it to my manager.
You should get him. You
Yeah.
should get him. But yeah, I feel like Ken Jeong should be in that realm of like, yeah, I'll just do it.
Yeah, he tried, and that's more than you could say for a lot of these.
Yeah.
So speaking of those, the people who will do anything for Kevin Smith, Justin Long has this character, and they're talking about Rocky IV, and Justin Long is just like, remember when he punched him? That was awesome. It was the Chris Farley show, the sketch from SNL, like
Totally.
and it's so overt. Like, come on, man, give me a little something here.
Again, and like it was pretty funny the moment, like, but again, like we talked about earlier, like a lot of the jokes just feel recycled. They feel like first draft jokes.
Yeah, it just seemed unnecessary.
Yeah. So, do you have any others that you want to bring up?
The only thing is the opening scene with the two of them, with Melody and Brian on the phone, was basically propelled the whole movie, and it's a long opening phone scene, and that reminded. And obviously, we know Kevin Smith loves horror movies. It reminded me of Scream.
Oh, sure, okay. I thought you were going to say Jerry Maguire or something. Like,
I didn't.
No, but yeah, okay, Scream, that works. Let's go with that one then. But all right, yeah, we talked about a lot of stuff. We don't need to wrap down all of the puzzle pieces, but any closing thoughts? Anything about the movie we didn't quite get into?
I don't know where he goes from here, man. Like, I mean, he could keep doing this. I mean, he could do anything else. He could retire if he wants to, right? Like he always says he is. But I don't mind him making movies like this. I just think it might be nice if someone else writes a draft of the movie for him, right?
I think either someone else writes a draft, or maybe he takes more time writing, and somebody else, one of these young kids that he loves working with, makes the movie. Maybe that's an option. I kept thinking this feels like a first-time filmmaker who loves Kevin Smith made this movie, not that it's a Kevin Smith movie.
Yeah, you know what? The first-time filmmaker is big, because I'm watching this and I'm like, it's executed fine. Like, there's some nice shots in here, and you never think of like the visual element of it.
That opening phone scene actually started off. I was like, oh wow, this is like a movie.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
but I definitely agree. I was like, this feels like a college kid wrote a first draft.
Yeah.
So
exactly. Well, I think it's a good place to wrap up the 4:30 movie. Jason, is there another movie you watched recently you want to recommend to our listeners?
Dave, what do I want to recommend today that I've watched recently?
Doing this in person, so he can't have something up on his screen.
I have it. I do have it.
Okay.
How about Big Wednesday? Speaking of, did I recommend Big Wednesday on here recently?
No, I don't know what that is.
Oh, okay. So it's John Milius, right?
Okay.
Famed screenwriter and director. This movie is from '78. It's about 3 friends who are surfers, and what I really loved about it is the structure of how they did it was. Are you sure we never talked about this?
No, I don't think so.
So like, it's basically done in 4 acts, and like first act is when they're like teenagers really going for it. It's like, Southern Swell, 1963, right? And then, the next act they'll be in like their 20s, and they'll be like Western Swell, 1968. And it's based around Vietnam. It's nostalgic, not for Vietnam, the war, but, for that kind of that, kind of like endless summer, that kind of youth and everything. And it's a really good movie. I recommend it.
All right. I'll have to check that out. Not a lot of surfing movies nowadays.
That might be the next thing for Kevin Smith right there.
There you go. Jason, what's going on with Awesome Movie Year, and what's going on with your comedy and everything?
Awesome Movie Year. We are still in 1969. We're coming towards the home stretch of it, but it's been a really good season. Lots of fun movies we've covered. Today we recorded The Wild Bunch, and then we still have Midnight Cowboy to go. We still have your crazy pick to go. So 1969, good season. Excited. We have a crazy 20th season planned, retrospective with movies from all different seasons that we've never covered before. So that's been fun. Eat This Comedy is rocking and rolling. We have 2 shows coming up in Vegas. We have October 13th at Rebellion Pizza. That's going to be great. And then if you're in Colorado Springs, Uva Wine Bar, October 20th. All of this will be on eatthiscomedy.com, so you can find tickets there. And then that's just doing a bunch of comedy. Find me on Letterboxd, go for Jason, and that's it.
All right. Well, Jason, this was a fun, unique episode to do. Thanks to Downtown Cinemas for letting us record it here in the lobby under their greenery wall.
Do you think, as an homage to this movie, we should go sneak into another movie right now?
Let's do it. Maybe the front room. We're looking at the poster right here. I want to see that.
All right, Joe Black is with us. We did episode 200 and 300 with Joe. So even though we squeezed in this random last-minute 400th episode on the 430 movie with Jason Harris, we had to get Joe on too. How's it going, Joe?
It's going great, and aside from the number count of episode, I'm also like Kevin Smith is, the reason why you and everyone I know now knows me. So his work. So this is cool. Absolutely,
and we. I think we kind of talked about doing a Clerks 3 episode at one point, but then we just kind of were like, let's just not be negative. And instead you made your YouTube video, which is awesome and people should go check out. But the 430 movie, I didn't have any faith going into this. You did, though, and I would say I didn't hate it. Like I've hated a lot of his other movies. I still don't think it's very good necessarily, but you liked it a little more than me, right?
I did, and I actually liked it. I saw it a second time, and I actually liked it much more the second time. I actually joked because the first 20 minutes up until the kids get to the theater, I thought was just great. I was like,
I agree.
This is right on the money, and I really liked, even though it was a little clunky, I really liked the last 10 minutes with him and the girl on the date. I thought that was really nice. But the second they got in line at the theater, the movie just kind of stopped for me. Yeah. And when I went to go see it again on Sunday, I was running late, and I joked. I was like, I know for a fact I'm going to walk in as soon as they're in line. I just know it. And sure as shit, I did. I walked in, and as they were talking about Jaws in line, I was like, fuck. But I noticed, first of all, I'll say this. The theater I saw it in Thursday night, completely empty other than me and a couple friends, right? And the theater I saw it in that day, packed. Okay. It was packed. And that audience, they weren't like cheering or anything, but they were laughing at the jokes. Like those jokes were landing for that audience, right?
Yeah.
And that kind of opened me up a little bit to the movie in a way. Now, I still don't think that anything in it's particularly funny. That's not true. There's like a handful of really funny bits in it. But the fact that the jokes were landing for the people that are into that kind of opened my eyes to the movie a little more.
Absolutely. And I mean, that, especially for a movie that's about that theatrical experience and going to the movies with friends. I even said to Jason during our main conversation, I was like, I bet that at, his, View Askew Universe screenings, I don't know what they're called, you would know, but, all of his, cult of Kevin Smith, I bet they're eating up, all of these kind of, to me, recycled jokes that, just kind of feel lukewarm. But I bet people are cracking up and having a great time.
I also partially blame the trailer because the trailer not only gave away most of the cameos, but it also gave away the entire cameo. Yeah. You know what I mean? So many of the cameos are one-liners. So, like, if you're just watching the movie and Jeff Anderson turns around, all of a sudden you're going to be like, hey, what the fuck? But you already know it's coming, because of the trailer. And then that's all it is. It's just the part that's in the trailer. And you're like, oh, shit. Also, if you notice the Bucklick poster, the movie that they're going to see, it's a spoof of the Fletch poster. but it's very clearly Jeff Anderson.
I thought it might be. I didn't really like catch whether or not for sure it was, but I thought it might be.
Yeah, and so when I was watching it the first time and knowing that his cameo was coming up, I was like, oh shit, is like that going to be the thing where like the guy who stars in it is there for some reason? And blah, blah. No, the answer's no.
Nah. That is that that Kevin Smith attention to detail on display. You know?
There are so many little things you can do too to make the movie tie in together better. Like even at the beginning when he makes the phone call, which is wonderful. You have him hang up, very excited. His mom should come into the kitchen and be like, "What are you so excited about? I'm going on a date, blah, blah, blah." And she should say, "All you do with your life is go to these damn movies. You need to think about your future. What are you going to do with your life? Blah, blah, blah." That's all you need. Just 10 seconds. And suddenly you've got a movie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I still, the writer in me gets frustrated by that. Like, but again, before we jump into the piece, I will say about this movie that the reason why I did like it overall, even the first time, is because I loved the last Kevin Smith movie I really loved was Tusk, and that was in 2014. But even Tusk was coming from a really like negative place, like a really like a painful place for him, obviously an ugly, painful place. But it was very honest and very good. I think Tusk is excellent. This is the first Kevin Smith movie I've liked in 10 years, but it's the first Kevin Smith movie since I think Zack and Mary Make a Porno, which is 2008. It's the first one since then that seems to be coming from a place of like good faith. And good nature. You know what I mean? He claims that that's what Jay and Silent Bob reboot was, but I disagree. There's an ugliness to that. There's a mean-spirited cynicism to that. Exactly. I mean, look what they did to the Justice character in that movie. I mean, she's awful. Like you know, like what she did to Jay, and then the same thing in Clerks 3, which again, watch the YouTube video. I think more people have seen that video than they've seen 4:30 movie. But this one, I think that was such a sigh of relief. It's like, wow, for the first time in a decade and a half, he's coming from a good place. And I think that there's a lot of meaning in the title, outside of it just being 4:30 instead of 4:20, because Kevin Smith 5 years ago would have called it the 4:20 movie.
Sure.
And he's recently, as we all know, quit smoking weed. So he's obviously trying to do something new with his life. He doesn't like the place he's in, so he's trying to move out of that. And I'm in full support of that.
Right on. Well, I read to Joe all of the puzzle pieces we discussed in the main conversation. So we're going to get a couple of extra pieces from Joe here. Joe, what do you got?
Do you want the obvious one first or the specific to me one?
Let's go with the obvious one first.
Licorice Pizza.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, he's even flat out said it, that this is his licorice pizza. And part of me thinks that, like, God, I don't want to assume this because it's kind of a dick thing to say, but like, part of me feels like he watched Licorice Pizza. He's like, see, man, you shouldn't even try to make it a story. It should just be about moments. You know what I mean?
No.
So you know what I mean? And this is his version of like not even trying, like he's going out of his way to not make it a story. You know what I mean? It's supposed to feel just like a memory. But I'll say that he does a really good job of not capturing what Licorice Pizza did necessarily, but he did a really good job of reflecting on what Licorice Pizza did in his own way. Like, nothing in the movie feels necessarily derivative of Licorice Pizza. But it is that same idea of just, like, going back to your childhood and embracing how easy it was to feel things because of how simple life was.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like, going to some of the pieces we talked about, things like the Fablemans, of course, Adventureland, Snack Shack, Empire of Light, Cinema Paradiso, all these things that are like looking back at what life was like and when, things could be simple and when things could be enjoyable and fun and, opportunity was out there.
Sure. And I'll say this, I think that this movie is equal in quality to Fablemans, except unlike Fablemans, they did not spend $100 million and it was not 2.5 fucking hours long. Yeah. I think that to that I say that this movie is better because of it. And I think the acting is about just as good too. I really do. I actually think that the Austin, the main kid in it, we all know how I felt about Clerks 3. So like, and I hated that character of Coltrane so much initially because it was just like, what is Kevin Smith doing? Casting his daughter's boyfriend as the new version of him, and his first bit where they're taking the kites out of the car is so phony that like it just sets me up for a bad view of that kid to begin with. But I noticed a big progression in him in Fool's Paradise. I thought he was very good in that, and that's him and Kim Jeong as well. And then,
Yeah.
and then in this, I noticed he was even better. I appreciate that he's feeling things and not going for moments. And I think that if he doesn't fall into the same trap that a lot of other young actors do, and I'm talking about like some of the A-listers like Jennifer Lawrence or Leonardo DiCaprio, as long as he doesn't take the fact that he's good already for granted and keeps working on getting better and getting closer to the truth, he could be a great actor. Like, I think he could be a really valuable, great actor as long as he doesn't, just coast on the fact that he was good right out of the gate.
Yeah, I think he definitely shows some promise. I also think Siena Agudong, the lead girl, does as well.
She's
it'll be interesting to see what they do, if they do anything, or if they just kind of end up in this whole Kevin Smith thing.
Sure.
But we'll see. But yeah, Licorice Pizza though, great piece to bring into this. What do you have for your more specific to you piece that you wanted to bring up?
I don't know what season. I don't know what episode. I just know it was during the Nickelodeon era. There's an episode of Doug
Okay.
where he takes Patty Mayonnaise. He asks her to a movie. And the whole thing is everybody keeps telling him, dude, it's a date. You're going on a date with Patty Mayonnaise. He's like, no, it's not a date. What are you talking about? In fact, she might have even asked him. I can't remember. But the whole thing is Doug, suddenly there's like a lot of pressure on the whole situation where Doug's like, oh my God, like, what do I do? Like, I'm in love with this girl. And is this a date? Is this a thing? Is this, and his buddies basically tell him, look, man, the way you can tell if it's a date is if she holds your hand during the movie. If she holds your hand during the movie, it's a date. And it happens. Yeah. It happens, and it's this magical, and that's all that happens in the episode. It doesn't lead to them getting into a relationship. Maybe it did on the Disney era. I didn't watch that shit. But that's not what the episode is about. The episode is not about Patty and Doug getting together. You know what I mean? The episode is about what it's like to be next to the girl. You know what I mean? And
it feels like you could have used this as a puzzle piece on our Licorice Pizza episode, honestly.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And what's funny is, obviously, obviously I relate very much to the Brian David character in this movie. Sure. As I'm sure a lot of us do who listen to the show and or are on it or in the group. But, so many first dates are like, we're going to a movie. You know what I mean? And I've had that a couple of times where it's like, is this a date? Are we going to hold hands? We did. Date. Nailed it. Yeah. You know what I mean?
My first movie date was Patch Adams. Yeah, I remember a long time ago.
Oh, wow.
What would that be, 97 or something?
Yeah, something around. I mean, God, and Tom Shadyac at that point was just like, he had the world on a string. I think that's 99 or 98. Actually.
Yeah, that might be.
97 is Liar Liar.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, duh. No. I don't know. No, yeah, I mean, that's always been like the big thing. And in fact, I remember, I mean, it's gone positive and negative for me. I remember waiting. I went to waiting with this girl. It was like my buddy was dating this girl and her best friend was this girl I was interested in. And when we were getting to go to see Waiting, I was like, is she going to sit next to me? Is she gonna sit? And she like straight up sat on the opposite side. Nice. And I was like, well, we did end up dating later though. That's kind of funny. But, nice. But even my wife now, like, I invited her to go see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. That was when, and she said, and we had been friends for a little over a year at that point. And she said, okay, cool. It's a date. And I suddenly was like,
oh,
is it
the tingle?
Is that what's happening? Are we going on a date? Like and so I'm standing in line waiting for her to show up. And I'm like, if we hold hands, that's what this means.
There you go.
And I think that this movie very, very much so captures that. Like I think that, and that I think that's too why I edge it into the I like this movie. You know what I mean? I really do, because it does definitely capture that for better or worse. And I got to give it, there are a couple of jokes in it that are just perfectly solid. Like when the Hands Across America people all turn around to watch the fight and still hold hands. That's good. And there's that joke where he sits down next to his buddy who is like making faces and we think he's like getting a hand job or something from the girl in the back row. But when the camera pulls back to reveal, she's just straight up on top of him, riding him. I thought that was very funny. Like I was like, that's pretty good, because you're expecting like her head to pop up or something like that. But no, just the fact that she's just straight. I was like, okay, at least he, I don't know. I laughed more at this than I have at one of his movies in a long time.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Absolutely. Even if it didn't all work, definitely a lot more laughs than his last few movies for sure. But yeah, anything else you want to throw in there? Any closing thoughts on the 4:30 movie?
two kind of quick closing thoughts. One of them is I asked Kevin about the runtime of this movie. I was like, it's pretty tight. What did you cut out? And he's like, not a lot. The script was 81 pages. And he said that he's like, no Kevin Smith movie has any right to be over 90 minutes. Mm-hmm. And I straight up said to him, I was like, Dogma? Because Dogma is the movie that made me want to be a filmmaker. That movie changed my life. And I actually just got to see it in a theater a few months ago. I flew all the way home to Florida to watch it on film at this theater that was closing, and that was one of the movies they were playing. And that movie's powerful. That movie's incredible. And so, it's 2 hours and 7 minutes long. And I said to him, I was like, Dogma? And he goes, well, that movie's made by a much different, better Kevin Smith. And I was like, was it? You know what I mean? Like, no, just like if he still had to shoot on film, I think he'd still be a great filmmaker. He's got all these excuses to buy into the fact that he doesn't like himself, and that bums me out. When he starts loving himself again, when he finally does get to like look back on some of these things like Dogma and go, you know what, you're fucking right. Like, that'll be the day. The other thing I'll say to close up is confession time. After seeing it the second time, I went home and I said to my wife, wife, let's watch Yoga Hosers. I haven't seen Yoga Hosers since opening night back in 2016. And in total transparency, that was the first Kevin Smith movie that I straight up was like, that's not a good movie. Yeah. Like, I'll defend all of them. I love Cop Out. I fucking love Cop Out. You know what I mean? Like, to that point, I felt that there had been no bad Kevin Smith movies. And that one, I was like, well, that's clearly bad, but that's okay. Little did I know it was just the canary in the coal mine. So here I am watching it for the first time in 8 years. And about 10 minutes in, I noticed, I was like, wait a minute, am I laughing? What the fuck is going on? And by the end of the movie, I was like, wait a minute, did this movie get me there? Did this movie get me from two girls rocking out with an overage guy, in the back of their convenience store, to them battling a goalie made out of human body parts that's being operated by a bunch of tiny bratwurst monsters? Did the movie get me there? Wow. Well, I know, and David, I gotta say that at this moment in my life, I gotta say that I really liked Yoga Hosers. Like, I know, I really liked it the second time. I was like, you know what, this movie rocks. Maybe part of it's Genesis Rodriguez. I've learned I have a real weakness for her. Her 5 minutes of screen time in this is some of the best stuff in the movie, in 4:30 movie. But yeah. I total confession. I'm now on the I like Yoga Hosers train.
Wow. I don't know if I'll ever give it a second shot.
Don't be like me. Yeah. Don't be like me.
We need you to take one for the team here. So yeah.
Oh God. Truer words. But yeah, that's all I have to say. I like 4:30 movie. If he keeps going in this direction, I mean, look, he's got me for life. You know what I mean? Like,
of course. Yeah, I think we all can agree with that. Even with all the bad ones, we're always rooting for him, even though he's made some just terrible stuff over the last 10 years. But at least this was a glimmer of hope. If nothing else. After
Clerks, as some of your listeners may know, he and I had a whole thing about Clerks 3. It was like a big deal, and I ended up on his podcast because of it. And it was, and I still hate that movie to this day. But he did at this screening I was at the other night. He at one point he came shook my hand. He's like, "Did you like it?" And I said, "I did." And he goes, "I got you back." And he slinked away before I had enough time to say, "Dude, you never lost me."
Yeah.
Not to get too TV movie-ish, but dude, you lost you. You know what I mean? Like you never lost me. He really didn't. That's not what it was ever about. So
yeah, absolutely. Anyways. Well, Joe, tell people where they can find you and your work and your films, everything you're up to.
On Facebook, we got Blue Means Pregnant Films. It's our production page. We also have a website, bluemeanspregnantfilms.com, but that's kind of under construction right now. And you can also see our last two movies, Natasha Hall and Suffrage, on Tubi and Amazon. And we have a new film called I Don't Know that's starting the festival rounds in October, and hopefully will get released sometime early next year.
Right on. Well, Joe, thanks for coming back. I'm sure we'll get you back again sometime soon.
Can't wait.
On March 27th, 2024, Elon Musk was deposed in a libel lawsuit filed by Ben Brody. The deposition is a new Hug House podcast reenactment of the entire deposition, word by word, in full, taken very seriously.
May I finish?
Sure.
Do you feel you need to yell again?
I might.
The deposition drops on the 4th of July, 2024, with 4 weekly episodes. Subscribe on your podcatcher of choice or find us at hughouse.productions today.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed that conversation about the 4:30 movie. Thank you to Downtown Cinemas for letting us record it there. Thanks to Jason Harris for joining me on that one. And thank you to all of you for listening. And thanks to Joe Black for jumping on at the end there as well. If you're enjoying piecing it together, make sure you are subscribed wherever it is that you're listening. Also, drop us a 5-star rating and review wherever it is. If it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Good Pods, Pocket Casts, it helps to make sure the show gets seen by more people. And then we can keep doing more cool stuff as we continue on to another 100 episodes. So, yeah, make sure you're subscribed. Get in touch. I'd love to hear what you thought, if you thought of any puzzle pieces for the 4:30 movie, or if you think of any for any of the other movies we cover on the show. Get in touch. I'd love to hear your pieces. I'll read them on the next trailer episode. And, yeah, it's always fun getting some audience participation on the show. Also, coming out to our next live show, we'll be back at Downtown Cinemas on Saturday, October 12th for Terrifier 3. We also have a bunch of other live shows coming up. Jason's actually going to be on our Joker Folie à Deux on Thursday, October 3rd up at Maya Cinemas. Lots of shows on the way. So, you can find out about all of them and also get in touch at piecingpod.com and on all the socials at piecingpod. So let's close this out with a piece of music like I always do. And, in theory, this movie is about someone who wants to become a filmmaker. Although, like I said during the conversation, I don't feel like that was explored that much. But I am involved in filmmaking as a composer, and I talk about that all the time on the show. I'm going to play a piece of music from a film I recently scored. It's called Whose Proposition Is It Anyway? It's from a director I've collaborated with a number of times over the years named Chris Johnson. This is part of that score, and that film will be out, I believe, in October, although, whenever it comes out, I'll make sure to post a link. But you're getting to hear a little bit of the score right now, part of the main theme from the film. So I hope you enjoy it, and we'll be back with more piecing it together real soon.
An All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.